Hello there, and welcome to the second part of the second day of our NVIDIA Omniverse training series. This is the second part of the day 2 training. In the first part, we had a high-level walkthrough of Use the Composer, and we fixed a small bug. And today, we are going to learn how to build an extension in Omniverse from scratch. We are going, as an example, to create a cube spawn extension, which will be an extension with a button, and when we click the button, we will be spamming cubes in the scene. This is what I call the hello world of Omniverse. Then we will learn how to debug our extensions. Then I will talk a bit about layers, what they are and how we use them. We use the files. Then we will extend our cube spawn extension. We will add more buttons and more shapes. I will also explain how to build a command, which is an instruction, a class in Python, and this will help us to execute instructions from a button in our extension, for example. And finally, we will see how do we publish our extension, and we will use GitHub for that. So we will publish our extension in GitHub, and we will make it available in our Omniverse application. Okay, so let's go for it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is to create our first extension. To do so, we will be copying a Kit extension template from a repository. I will be sharing this link in the description of the video, which is the official documentation from NVIDIA Omniverse about extensions. You have a lot of examples here, videos, walkthrough. I totally recommend to go through this. And then, because I want these videos to be totally practical, let's go for it. I'm going to copy this repository. I will be sharing the link as well in the description of the video. Going back to my VS Code, I'm going to open the folder for extensions. And then I'm going to clone the repository here. And that's it. We have our Kit extension template. For future reference, any new extensions that you want to add, we will be adding them here. I'm going to start launching the application. First I need to go back to the root file, to the root folder. And then I'm going to launch the Use the Composer application. So we are going to add this path to our application, and so to the until the folder X. And as I said, for future reference, new extensions that you want to add, you can add them here, and because we are going to add this path already, they will be automatically available in your application. So we are adding the path here, and automatically it is available here with the default names, default description, dependencies, not too much. And it has been loaded. And this is the default template that we have. We have a Windows with two buttons, and this button is a counter, and then we can reset the counter here. Okay, so this is the Hello World application extension for Omniverse. Now let's see how do we make some changes here. Now we are going to customize the extension. Basically, we're going to change the name here. First thing I want to do is to change the name of our extension in our extensions folder, because in the future we will be adding more extensions here and you don't want to have all of them the same name. So I'm going to rename this extension. Before do that, I recommend to remove this extension from your application, and I'm going to even close the application. I'm going to rename that Lova spawn saves. Now this will give you an error if you try to load your extension in your application, because we need to change the references to this name. The first one is in the extension toml file in Python module. Oh. I'm copying the name. I got that one. I will change the title later, so you will see the changes directly in the extension. I'm going to change the name of these folders as well. They don't have to be the same name as the name of the extension, but to be consistent, I'm going to use the same names. I'm going to remove this Python cache folder. Is created automatically when you are executing the extension in your application, but I don't want to have any cache saved here. This test folder has also references, but we don't need the test folder. This is for a future lesson. I'm going to delete, and then we don't have to do anything with the init Python file. We go to the extension Python file, and we are going to change these references as well. Control save, and I think that's it. I didn't save that one. Then in theory you don't have to, but sometimes I found that I got an error if I don't rebuild the application. So I'm going just to rebuild it. Then we'll launch the application. I'm copying the path. Fingers crossed. So in the extension tom file, you have the title that you want to give to the extension, the visible title. Then you have this description. This is only internal. It will not affect the UI, but I will show you now. Okay, I already copied the path. Here's our extension. Okay, all good. Now we change the name of the extension. I'm going to change the title here. I'm going to call it spawn shapes. Save. And you see we have changed the title. Now I'm going to change this description If I save, you will see that nothing happens here. I'm going to remove this. Okay. Because this information is stored in a different file, which is that one MD file in the docs folder. This is also information that you see there. Initial version of extension user interface window. We will change that later, but for now I'm going just to change. I'm going to copy the description. And here I'm going to change the description, and I'm also going to change the name. If you save it, still nothing happens here, but if you unswitch and switch again, or just refresh here, it will change. This image, these two images, are stored in the data folder, so we can change that later as well to customize more your extension. And that's it for now. Now we are going to change the behavior. Well, we're going to change some buttons and what they do. Okay, so I log out for a minute and I decided to remove the extension from my Kit application template. So this is the whole project where you have your applications, etc. But you don't need to have your extensions here. So I created a new folder to save our extensions directly, and I added a new path here. And if you click this Visual Studio Code button, you will land directly in your extension where we are going to do the modifications. I also created already a GitHub repository for this extension. So I have a control source. And that's it. Let's going to make some changes. So we are going to make some changes here. remember that we want to try to create a button to spawn cubes. So, but later I will want to add more shapes. So I'm going to call this shape spawn spawner. I'm going to remove the functionality for the buttons that we have right now, which is the counter. For now, I'm going to keep the onClick function. So I'm going to just print something here. Click it. I'm going to remove onReset. I don't know if I will need it. I'm going to remove the second button. For now, I'm leaving this onClick call directly, but if we need, probably we will need to use some arguments later, and we will convert this function into a lambda function. Oh, so this button, I'm going to call it create cube, and that's it. If I save it, okay, we have this. I'm not sure why I have this space. 1 second. Because we are if you remove the horizontal stock, probably because we have one vertical stock. Vertical stock. If I remove the horizontal stock, let's see. Sorry, it's because we have this label. Yeah, so now we have just the windows with one button, and I'm going to dock this here, for example here. Okay, you can also save this layout, so I'm going to call this layout a bit long. Layout 1. Save. So now you have the default layout, and then if you click the load your saved layout, we will have our extension here already. Okay, this button is not doing anything because we have removed the functionality. Now we are going to prepare the command windows. Commands are actions that take place inside Omniverse, and I'm going to share in the description of the video another link with a few commands if you want to have a look to understand how they work. This is the official documentation about commands. And if you go to Developer tab and select commands, it will appear here. If you have, probably you will have a lot of stuff here. I don't because recently I cleared the history. But basically, if you do any action within Omniverse, it will be reflected. It will be saved as a command here. So I'm going to clear the history, and I'm going to remove this con. You see, anything that you do in Omniverse will be reflected as a command. I'm going to save that layout as well. So next time I will have all this straightforward. So the next step, because we want to have our extension, this button to create cubes, let's get the command to create cubes. You go to shape or to mesh, create a cube. We got the command, copy the command here, go back to VS Code, paste the command, we move the, I already did before, move the import library to the top with the other imports, and then we moved the instruction to our click function. We save it, and now I'm going to remove this cube, and now if we click the button, boom, objective met. If we click more than the button, we will keep creating cubes, one on top of the other. So they are here. Yeah. I'm going to remove them, create a new one. And that's the second point of the lesson. Now we are going to see how do we debug the extensions. Okay, let's continue. I had a break. As you can see, I changed my clothes. And now I'm going to show you how to debug your extensions. Then I'm going to open my application. Let me see. It is not out of range. Okay. So we have one extension in the developer tab, is VS Code link, that will allow us to connect to our VS Code. But first, we need to go to VS Code. In the extension template, I found this launch JSON file missing. You will be able to download it from my GitHub that I will share in the description of the video. But the most important thing is that you make sure that your port and your host are the same as you can see here. If I click refresh, it's not connected. We need to run the debug first. So I'm going to click play here. Now it's running. And now if I go back to my VS Code and click refresh, we can see that it is connected. Now something quick. I'm going to add a stop point in. I already did it, but okay, you just click to add a breakpoint here after we click the button. So you go back. If I go to my extension and I click the button and I go back to my VS Code, you can see that we have a breakpoint here. Okay, and we don't have much information because we didn't add anything, but some information about what is happening. We didn't create the cube yet because we have stopped the code. So if I go back to my VS Code and click continue, we're back here. We have created the cube. And that's how we debug. Now we are going to see how do we use the debug console to test stuff. I'm going to connect again the debug. I'm going to click the button. Check. Okay, we are connected. We click the button. We have stopped here. And now, okay, we are having stopped here. We have already executed this command. And now let me pick up the cheat sheet. I need to call this library. Then I'm going to store in a variable called stage our state. I'm going to store in a print variable our cube. We can get, by the way, you have a you can see automatically the commands here, so you don't need to memorize. We are getting the actual scale of the cube, which is 1 by 1 by 1, and we are going to resize the cube to 2 by 2 by 2, so double. We set the new size, and if we resume the code, the execution, and you go back to your application, you will see that you have created a cube 2 by 2 by 2. I'm going to share in the description of the video this link as well, with a bunch of debug actions, a bunch or all of them, I'm not sure, but it's pretty interesting if you have a look to this documentation, if you want to dig deeper. And let's go to the next section, which is we will talk a bit about layers and how to use USD4 extensions, and we will be adding these USD files to our layers. I'm going to have another break. See you in a bit. Okay, now to end the lessons, we are going to see layers, just very high level, and USD4 extensions. Maybe this is a bad wording, basically USD files for whatever. And how to build a command, we already did that, but we are going to use it again because we are going to extend the functionality of our original extension. I'm going to share another link in the description of the video. This is a YouTube video. This is a definition of what is a USD. So Jacob Norris will explain it much better than myself. So I encourage you to go for it. And now I'm going back to my application. If you go to layers, layers are basically USD files. And we have a root layer, which is the base of your project. And this root layer can have sublayers. Each sublayer can be will be a USD file. So you can work on these USD files independently. And thanks to your root layer, you will have connections between the rest of the sublayers to the rest of your project. If you go to here, if you go to edit, it will open your root layer in VS Code. This is the definition of your whole project, not your whole project, but right now we have only a root layer. So this is the definition of the root layer. This is the USD file. If I go back to the project, to the application, you can see that you can export this layer as a USD-zip. This is a compressed version of the USD file, and you can decompress it and you can open it in a different project. You could export this and it could be a sub layer of another project, or you can open it directly as a root layer. Just have a look. If you finish editing, I didn't show you, but if I go to my extension and I create a cube, you see this cube has 1 by 1 by 1 size. If I go to my root layer, I go back to editing. Now we have this mesh cube in the definition of our layer. Let's change just the size of the x-axis. You save it. If you go back, you can see that we have changed the size of the cube. Finishing editing. Now to finish, we are going to add another button here. To do so, I'm going to remove this cube for now. Let's go back to VS Code, to our extension. So I want to add another button to create cons. To do so, we are going to add a new parameter in the onClick function. And we are going to use a lambda function instead of calling directly the onClick. Let me copy paste here. So now we will call this as a lambda with one parameter that I'm going to call it form, for example. The prim type will be the one that we have here. And that's okay. Now we need to create a second button. You can imagine that it's the same, but if you don't know what's the action, remember that if you go to commands, I'm going to clear the history. Go to create mesh con. Copy the command. Back to VS Code, paste. So it's the same. One second. Con. Yeah, con. Spawn. Con. If you save it and go back to your extension, you can see we have two buttons now. I'm going to remove this one. So now you can spawn a cube and you can spawn a cone as many times as you want. As an exercise, I recommend you to make more buttons. You can change the user interface. Just make a small research on what are the options, and maybe you can select to spawn the items in different positions each time as well. I leave it to you, and that's enough for the lesson 2. See you in the next one.